Hi. So I'm Ernesto Pye. I'm going to talk about Prettier. Prettier. Everybody likes pretty code. At least I do. Or at least everybody knows a guy that really hates inconsistent code, white space all over the place, new lines that are not consistent. Where I work, I'm one of those guys. We have a few, but I'm really picky about that stuff. I try not to do this in our code reviews because I hate to waste time on that. But it's just a waste of time. It really is what it is, and it pains me to admit it because I love bickering about this stuff, like whether you like tabs or whether you're wrong. So here comes Prettier, and what does Prettier do? So Prettier will take your JavaScript code, it'll parse it into an abstract syntax tree, and it'll then reprint it, and it'll make it look pretty. And in essence, that's really all it does. It has very few options that you can configure, and this is by design, essentially to, again, help reduce the amount of bickering you have related to this stuff. So, in a nutshell, and I may need to make this a little bigger. So, yeah. It's about as big as it gets, sadly. So, hold on. I can do some Mac stuff.
Stupid CSS.
Who knows? I know. Who knows the shortcut for zooming in on OS 10?
Switch to Windows.
No, command plus will do it. Hold on.
Copy and paste it to Notepad.
Hold on. I'm gonna look this up. Wait to zoom.
You can edit this out, right?
I know this will work, I'm sure.
Is this officially part of the tool?
I can't find
You
it.
could just inspect it, zoom it in, and then it'll update.
Do we need to restart?
That's
No,
more
screenshot
and zoom in.
You can watch the video later and then you zoom the video. But you can kind of see, you can hopefully kind of see, that some lines are missing semicolons, which is awful. Some people may disagree there.
You know what you could do? You could probably change your resolution. Just
I tried, yeah.
no.
Well,
Okay.
but you can kind of,
No.
I can see.
Not even a little.
Not even a little bit.
Really, old man, get closer.
Hold on. I swear, I like.
It's all pretty on the right. It's ugly on the left. What more do you need to see?
Yeah.
It's just
orange.
Display settings.
like magnifying glass.
No, you just type
Windows
displays.
should have.
No, is this way?
Displays.
Displays.
There you go.
Let's try this. I don't know if you can tell, I do most of my work on Windows.
Oh, dude, you should have used.
Yeah, I know. I just.
Hands up who has two computers?
The other one's the desktop. Hold on. Yeah, do this. Well, let's do a thing.
Computers that keep track of my computer.
Is that a little better, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, brighter.
No.
Oh, so great.
How about this one?
Yeah!
It's gonna take a long time.
Wait,
There you go.
Hey,
I don't
Maybe.
think it changed.
press the thing again though, or was it stopped when you switched?
Oh. Okay. It's throbbing again.
Alright, I think we're just gonna have to move forward.
Yeah, sorry about that. So.
Can the projector magnify?
I was trying to.
No, it can't.
Don't put the
No, we're not touching the
There's an
projector.
accessibility thing, I swear.
No.
Here it is. Here it is. It's that. Okay, hold on. Hold on. It's gonna be amazing.
Is that French?
It's gonna be. I have no
Ernesto?
idea. Yeah.
Do you just want to start over, man?
Oh,
You got to leave this in. It's comedy gold.
So sometimes you have code that looks like this.
It's too big.
And this is. You can try an example. Obviously, not many people will write stuff like this, but people will be inconsistent about it. A lot of people just don't care about spaces. They just kind of throw them all over the place. Stuff like this really upsets me. I just would prefer to see something like this. And this is what Prettier does.
Pretty.
Yeah, that's the one time we're gonna need to look at to zoom this in. Now how do I zoom this out? I got it. So this is straight from the Prettier docs. So by far the biggest reason for adopting Prettier is to stop all the ongoing debates over styles.
Yes.
Because of guys like me talking about tabs versus spaces or semicolons and all this other stuff. This was from Reddit, and I actually really like this this quote. Like, nobody likes what Prettier does to their syntax. Everyone loves what Prettier does to their coworkers' syntax. I thought it was genius because sometimes I won't like what it does, and it really bothers me because I'll get it just right, and then it'll change it a little bit. And I'm like, it kind of sucks. But it's always consistent, and I think consistency is really the name of the game here. We just want it to be consistent. It's always going to have the same style throughout, and you don't have to worry about it so much. You can just basically stop arguing.
But what if that style's not good?
It's life.
Like, ternary expressions in Prettier are not pretty.
There's some stuff that isn't super pretty. I will agree with that. I will say I will take the fact that it is not configurable as much and that it just does it for you and it's consistent over maybe a couple things are not quite what I like.
That like ESLint disabled, you know, like in line.
Hey, hater, shush.
You could. And I won't talk
don't
about.
have that.
There's different forms.
Yeah.
So
Well-
you're plus plus. You can make your own.
I think you can. Can
You just gotta add it to
I
Prettier.
thought they had some
ignore
kind of a
it.
pragma thing where you can stop it from.
I don't think they do.
No, they don't.
But
Well,
I do know in 1.2 now they specifically address the ternary thing, so I'm looking forward to that update. Sorry, go ahead.
fair enough. No. That's a good point. Not everybody's gonna like it, but I like it because it just stops this conversation. Like, we don't have to have this over. No offense, Joe. I will talk about this outside of my 40 hours at any point, and then probably for 40 hours. But it's just
Shuts up,
stuff that you
Joe.
don't want to deal with at work, right?
You
just
said
want
tabs, right?
to.
Okay, we're cool.
Yes,
spaces
I'm
are
a
full.
tabs guy, but anyway. So, and actually Prettier will fix that for you, so you don't have to really worry about it. But anyway, so syntax backshedding, obviously we just did it, so you know why we want to use Prettier to get rid of that. It helps new guys. So if you are a new developer and you're not sure about what syntax should look like, or even just experienced developers, maybe you missed a curly brace or something. In my experience, Prettier does a really good job of kind of helping you find where that missing brace is, and maybe a bracket or stuff like that. And it just kind of lets you stop thinking too much about formatting your code, and that brings me to the next point, which is it helps you quit wasting time formatting code. Doing spaces and white space. Some editors will have some kind of code formatting tools built in. They tend to work, so-so. And again, it's all about personal preference in this case. But I think Prettier does a really nice job of this. So those are really easy to adopt. I set this up in an older AngularJS application, and I, ran everything through Prettier. Everything looked a lot better. I added some Git hooks, which I will be demoing in a little bit, and I had everything pretty much updated, within minutes, and then I could have other coworkers grab everything down to an npm install, and the next time that they run git commit, everything will be prettified for them, so they don't even have to worry about it, which is really cool, and sometimes can lead to them being a little surprised, but eventually, everybody kind of gets used to it, and it works pretty well. And yeah, so it's easy to adopt and use it against existing repositories. So it kind of sounds like a linter a little bit. So if you use something like ESLint, they have a --fix flag, which will actually change your code. And ESLint is pretty powerful because it gives you a lot more configuration options. You can do stuff like, I believe you can do like enforcing braces after your if and your else, which some people don't put in there, and that's terrible. Again, bickering, stupid. But you can do that kind of stuff. You can set up all those rules, and you can use them in conjunction. So there's actually a project called Prettier-ESLint, which I encourage you to check out. And what it does is it'll basically run your code through Prettier. It formats it a little bit for you, makes it look a little nicer, and then it'll enforce your more strict rules through ESLint. If you just use ESLint, it doesn't, from what I've seen, it doesn't get your code in a state that is quite as pleasing to the eye, I guess. And again, your mileage may vary. For me, it's been a really, really nice experience, but you can always argue about ESLint configurations and standards and which one you would like to use, but we can always argue. Arguing is fun. So language support, ES 2017, JSX, all this kind of good stuff. So basically your JavaScript is supported, and most of the flavors you're going to write it in. It also supports CSS, which is great. I actually didn't know that until I started working on this. I thought it was just for JavaScript. So I started cleaning up all my CSS and some stats that I have on this project I was talking about, and it gets it in pretty nice shape. Even GraphQL schema, if you're into doing GraphQL, it'll help keep it nice and formatted. And there's more information about some other languages that are supported on the Prettier site, so make sure you take a look at that if you're curious. And of course, editors. VS Code is supported. I think that's really, really popular these days. It'll have Atom support, even Vim. If you get stuck in there, don't call me. But it has support for a lot of these. And of course, one feature that I really like is Git hooks. It actually uses something called Husky, I believe, and through that, it'll automatically change your code as you're committing it to Git, which is just fantastic because it kind of lets you stop worrying about it. So let's do a little demo. I'm gonna have some code samples here, and I bet I can make these bigger. Yeah. Oops, that's my talk. Let's get this here. Okay, I got my little cheat sheet here. Okay. So I've got basically 3 folders, and I just have the same exact code. I have one JS file, one JSON file, one CSS file, and I've basically written them, making it be not pretty. Just sort of stuff is kind of all over the place. And when you're just writing code, sometimes you don't want to worry too much about this, and you just want to have something fix it for you. So that's the code. Let me actually not be on the screen. Let me go to here and okay. Back up. All right, so let me clear. Okay, so it's wrong folder. Okay. So to install this, you basically do an npm install global Prettier just to get the CLI installed, and then you can lock it to a specific version for your own project in case they make changes. They might make some changes that will make the code formatting differ. So if two people in your team have different versions, that could be a problem. So it's a good idea to do that. They have all information about how to do this on their docs. So I already have it installed. If I were to do, I'm going to show you the file that I have in. So that's the file I just showed you. That's a regular old JavaScript file. Now let me run Prettier against it. Oh boy. Okay. And that's the code.js. Okay. And you can see now that it's a little prettier. So you can see it kind of cleans up the white space, and it makes. I don't know if you noticed. You might not have the quotes where there's double quotes here. And then I got these, and then I've got single quotes here. Obviously, these are for formatted strings, but if you want to do consistent, quotes for your strings, it'll make it consistent for you, which is really nice. And you can pick either way. That's one of the few settings they give you, and I'll go over those in a little bit. If you want to actually write to the file, you can do this. Now, obviously, doing this is a little bit of a chore. You don't want to always be doing this stuff, and I'll show you easier ways of doing this. So let me show you the styles. So here's some styles, kind of look gross. So I'm gonna do CLI, and then styles CSS. Then you can see that it just clicks up the formatting for you. And it'll do this, and I'll also do it for the JSON file just so you can see it. That's not it. Styles.json, that's not. It's data.sun. There you go. You can see it kind of cleans it up for you. So pretty straightforward what it does. So that's for the CLI, and you can always use the CLI if if that's what you're into. If you want to just run this stuff manually, you can very easily. If you want to run this against your entire project, let's say it was under here, I can just do that, and it'll do everything. So if I just run this here, it'll just spit everything out to the console. But you would just do --write, and it'll update all of your source code, and then you can commit it and make somebody angry. But yeah, it's pretty simple to use. But if you're like me, you might like to have a way to have this be a little more automatic, a little more seamless. So one way you can do this is installing it through using Git hooks. And there's details on the Prettier doc site about this. But really, all you're doing is installing an npm package, which is there's Prettier here. Did I not save dev on this? I might not have. Anyway, it's on there. You can just follow the instructions to getting started link. But basically, you end up having this in your package JSON called pre-commit lint stage. So right before your code is committed, it's going to run lint stage. Lint stage is a tool you can use. There's 2 flavors of this: lint stage, and there's something else called pretty quick. Lint stage is a little better if you want to use it with other tools like ESLint. So that's just a recommendation. You can use either one. So if I were to now modify this code, so I'm gonna just make a little modification here just so that get the text, you can see it's modified. Let's do this one too, and this one. And I'm gonna go into here, and I'm gonna do a little git status, and you can see my files got changed there, so I'm gonna do git add, submit. So pretty. Yay. Yay. Put the A in there. So I'm going to run this. And so it'll create all this stuff. And you can see here it ran a task. Now, if I were to go back into VS Code, you can see that all the files got pretty fine for you. So pretty seamless. You really don't have to worry about it. Don't have to worry about it. I know for us, we do a lot of .NET development. In Visual Studio, you can do, there's a shortcut just like in VS Code to format your code. And sometimes people will forget to run it. So this kind of makes it so you don't have to worry about that. And finally, you can do it through VS Code. So there is a nifty extension you can install. If I can remember the 10 minutes. So I got.
I'm not sure. I think you've had
Pretty
longer
sure I'm
than
like,
that.
wait.
I'm going off
I'm
the
in
third
like-
restart.
So if I just show you I'm almost done. If I show you the extension, well, if you go to the extensions thing, which I sent
Square box and more.
What's that?
It's square box and more.
Oh, hi, yes. So you search for, thank you. So you search for Prettier, and the very first one, which I already have installed, you just install this, and it will set Prettier up as your editor formatter. And you can do a couple things. One thing is you can just run, let me just go back to my code here. So here is Prettier, and cheat sheet on.
I think you right click on the background.
So you can do, yeah, shift, option, yeah, shift, option F, there we go. And it just does it for you, which is really nice. The other thing you can do, if you're a little lazy like me, or you just want to always have this run, and you're a compulsive control plus S type person, you can just set this up within your settings. So if you go to your VS Code settings, there is something here called Format on Save, which you can kind of barely see here. So let me make that a little bigger, but I'll just do that and save. And I'm just gonna go ahead and save. And then it's there, and then I can go here and save this one, and it makes it pretty, and I save that one, and it's all great and pretty. And so, yeah, so you have a bunch of different ways of using it. It has a lot of language support. Oh yeah, the last thing is just show you the configuration file. I don't have all the features, all the things that you can do in here, and I can load this up for you to show you. One of the main things is the number of widths, or the number of characters that it'll wrap on. I think the default is like 120, which I didn't really like, so I made it 180, just like the two to go a little bit further. And there's plenty of examples about what this will do to your code, especially if you have functions with like a lot of arguments, and you're like, well, I don't want to have this giant line they have to scroll horizontally for. It'll just automatically wrap them for you, and it'll do stuff like that. So depending on what you like, you can change that setting. For semicolons or not, so if I do this, and then I go back, and I go here, and I save this one, semicolons are gone. So if
Yay!
you're this kind of person, let's not talk later. I like semicolons. Yeah, so there's really basic stuff. Again, if you want to do more advanced code replacements, you can use ESLint for that. But it is a really good starting point. I mean, I'm using it right now without ESLint, just Prettier currently, just to get it, to get the ball rolling and cleaning some old code up, and it's just been invaluable in doing this. So yeah, so let me just go back to this, and so you should follow this guy, James Long. He created this. He's awesome, cool guy, super smart. Take a look at their site, the Prettier site. They got a lot of documentation, a lot of the reasons why people use it and how to use it, and tons of samples. And they even have a playground. So if you're a little gun shy, you can go here, go to their playground, and you can start messing around with this. And you can see they even have. It's gonna be a little small here. You have different parsers for your different types of code that you might be writing. The print width, so this might be a good opportunity. You can see here how this is kind of going over and wrapping really quickly. If I set this to like 150, hopefully, there we go. Now it'll keep it to one line, because it'll allow up to 150 characters instead. So it's kind of up to you what you want to set that to. And there's a few other settings, but very limited. So give it a shot, and hope you like it.
Question. Supposedly it should never screw up your code, right? Because it uses the syntax tree. Have you ever seen any problems?
I haven't. I ran it against an Angular JS application with like like 700 or 800 code files, and it didn't have any issues there. But that just means that in my situation, it didn't do anything.
Yeah, we just started using it, and we ran it against a really, really large React application, so lots of files. Nothing wrong. I haven't seen it, other than the ternary problem and a few other personal issues with it. It doesn't serve great code. Absolutely not.
That's awesome.
And I don't know if it was totally clear when he was doing the pre-commit version, like you don't need to have that installed on your editor or the command line tool or anything like that. If you try to commit code, Prettier will run against the new code every single time it won't stop you from committing. Just before it commits your code, it's going to clean up your file automatically. So that's one thing that I really like about it. You don't need, it's not editor IDE specific in that regard, just Prettier, NPM.
We did have an issue with what was it, Ryan? We had an issue where you didn't npm install.
My Node version was.
Yeah, he had an old Node version and then it exploded. So heads up, try to keep that updated, Ryan. But otherwise.
Why did you need Husky? Couldn't you just have a pre-commit hook that runs an NPM script that runs Prettier?
It comes with the NPM Prettier package. When you set it up, it's just ready to go, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that is exactly right.
So nothing against Prettier, it's just the git commit hook. So by principle, you do a commit when you're happy with what you've coded. And the hook comes in where it essentially changes your code without you knowing the extent of it. Now, given there's a bug in Prettier that messes something up and you committed it, and usually after you commit it, you never go back and check what you committed because you're sure what you committed about.
But you're exhausted with tasks
Code
that
reviews.
you have to do.
Right.
The value of code reviews.
The value of code reviews.
Yes.
I mean,
Going into like a CI
yeah,
pipeline.
it's absolutely a
deploying
concern. It's definitely something
automatically.
that a lot of people are not used to, so you kind of have to work with it. I mean, like I said, I haven't run into any issues, so yeah, there are some bugs. My understanding is there's still plenty of active development, and I believe the author gets some money from Facebook right now.
Prettier?
Yeah, pretty sure.
For all your data.
Because they're using it. It had crazy adoption rates, which
that
is
bothers me.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's just the hook
I totally agree with that.
And you totally don't have to use it, right? You can use some of the other. I mean, I agree. I mean, and it's.
That's why you also have a pre-commit hook that runs your unit tests. You just run Prettier first, and then if it breaks, it won't check in.
Sure.
You could do that.
But didn't someone sneak like a Bitcoin mining into like a NPM package so if Prettier depended on some other package? You could theoretically be deploying the
I
code.
don't know the specific one.
I mean, if you had that in like a
Like
continuous
left pad
deployment
slash.
pipeline, that could just publish your code with that alteration already.
I mean, if they do that for like Webpack, you'd be screwed too. Or,
Yes.
there's so many. I mean, even.
Required JS.
Oh God, don't get me started. You're giving me flashbacks.
Okay.
I was gonna say in the very beginning when you showed your very first slide and you had like the really messy code on one side and then the clean code over here. I was gonna say you could almost end with the opposite now, because at the end of the day now, if I see something that's kind of screwy and I would totally reformat, I just don't care. Because it's all cleaned up.
True.
You know?
Yeah, true.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry,
Last question.
just curious, because I've heard you both kind of talk about this. You got a large application, you made large scale changes to it. What have you been using to ensure, other than your testing, to ensure that what you end with is what you started with? Just curious if there are other things other than what you're testing, because you're going to run this against your unit tests as well. So.
Right. I mean, I'll be totally honest. I just basically ran it, and I was sort of hoping that nothing would break. That's really. I mean, I did this a couple of weeks ago just to see what would happen, right? This was part of a migration to Webpack. So Webpack's pretty good about finding compilation errors too, because they have to parcel for your code, and they didn't find anything there either. So that was kind of part of the process for me. If you're not running something like that, you could potentially run into some issues like the ternary issue that Joe was mentioning. But in my experience, it hasn't been an issue in it.
Yeah, I don't think it could actually break anything, because it's literally just formatting. Like the quote thing is certainly it's mutating some stuff there,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, I mean that's all it's doing. It's just
White space.
controlling white space.
Yeah, like it doesn't even mess with your braces.
Yeah, it's
so
not, well, except in turn rates.
right, but so like if I do this, right, so it'll even just do that. It'll leave it alone. So generally speaking, the code you write is the code that it's just gonna format. It's gonna make it pretty, but it's not gonna necessarily mess with it too much. It won't mess with that's the whole point. Is like it won't mess with the functionality of it as much as possible, and it's done that so far for me. The problem is that it says held. Now if they break it, then obviously that.
So
But okay. So to be respectful of everybody else that only got 15 minutes,
Yes.
all the 5 speakers will be around. We've got another 20 minutes before we finish. Grab them afterwards. All right? Thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you.